Welcome to the Handyman Pros Radio Show, home improvement and maintenance tips from the pros.
Welcome to the Handyman Pros Radio Show Action Edition, where we feature feedback from you, our listeners. And I'm here with my old buddy, Larry. Larry, tell us a story, buddy. What have you been up to?
Ceiling fans, John. Ceiling fans down in, I've been doing this rental house. This house was built in 1943 and added 5 new ceiling fans. And it's
always fun. It's always fun to take those things out of the box with all the parts and everything all over the place. You know, what am I going to do with all this styrofoam stuff? You know?
Oh my goodness! Yeah, we don't want to talk about the environmental impact of the packaging for a ceiling fan.
Packaging on those things is amazing. But you know, anybody out there that's been doing fans, you know what we're talking about.
You know exactly what we're talking about. You also know about the 10,000 screws. I will say, when you're doing 5 fans in a row, you actually achieve an economy of scale when it comes to putting it together.
Oh yeah,
it becomes
it's like when I put on 18 doorknobs.
Yeah, like that time. Yeah, when you put right, you get down to like, yeah, baby, I know exactly what's going. Bing, 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 bing. You get to that economy of scale. But it actually. So here's the thing. We received an email from Susan, and Susan had a question. Susan said, I've got a fan that seems to be out of balance. It's kind of, she said she can visibly see it being out of balance. And so is there a way to fix this, or how do you actually balance the fan, I guess is what she was asking. But there's 2 things that came to my mind when we did it. Let's talk about, John, I think you said you just balanced yours as well.
Yeah, I just did mine. So, you know, all you helicopter guys out there, you know what we're talking about here. But there's a couple of different things that can happen with these fans, and Larry, I don't know. Sometimes when you put them up, you might know some of the cheaper ones that the blades aren't at the same angle. That's going to cause an imbalance, and then you start getting a creak, you know, and when you got the fan on, and
I always thought that was my knees,
or you know, things back and forth, and the chains are banging against the glass, and you know, the bulbs and stuff like that, and you know, really gets annoying. Now you will notice that on the new, you know, on the fans that you get, they always give you like a little weight. So now, if you have an older fan, you know, clean it really good first. You're not going to have those weights anymore. You know, those things are long gone, right? You threw them out somewhere. But, you know, after a while, these things, you know, clean them really good, make sure all the dust is out. But if you've got one, and I just had one, and it was working, you know, it's fine now. I'm actually looking at it, and it's rock solid. But what you want to do is you want to label each blade, you know. Now, let's say you got 5 blades on the fan, label them 1 through 5, and I use, guess what, our buddy painter's tape. And just put a little, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I used you can use a washer or a quarter, something that weighs about that much, and put it at the tip of one blade. Start the fan up again. You tape that thing on there with painter's tape on the end of the blade on the top side. Start it up and see if it gets worse or it gets better. And if it gets worse, go to the exact opposite blade, put it on that blade, do it again. And you keep working this around until you start to see it get a little better. And then add weight to the adjacent blade with another quarter or a washer or whatever. And you play around. Now, it takes just a little bit of time. It takes a little doing, but then you'll get it balanced out. So if you're with me here, I'll recap, is that you want to label all the blades so you know which one you're starting with and where you're at. So you have to balance, you know, add a little weight to the blade, see if it gets better or it gets worse. If it gets worse, go to the opposite side of that blade on the other blade, try it again. Once you find the blade it starts to get a little better, then you kind of play with that weight. Now, the weight can move in and out. And we've talked about this before in the shows. You got a moment, if you will. So the quarter is going to act differently as it's on the tip of the blade than it is closer to the center. But start at the tip and see. It didn't take me very long. It probably took me, you know, maybe 20 minutes, 15 minutes to play with this. And I finally got it. And it's, you know, rock solid.
No more rattling of the chains?
No more rattling. Oh. I mean, that drives me nuts. Sometimes you go into some of these places and the fans are just, I was like, man, that thing's going to come off the wall, not the ceiling. You know?
Well, and so that leads to my tip is before you start any of that process, because I've had people call me and they're like, oh, while you're here, can you balance my fan out, right? And so this is observational on my part. I go to the home, and I usually, like I said, we do a lot of to-do lists, but in that process, I go to the fan. And the first thing that you need to check before you do any of what John just described, which is really critical to do what John describes, but make sure the fan blades are actually all screwed up into the housing, that they're tight.
Right.
Because if they're not tight, you will get the same effect. It will rattle that fan apart.
You will absolutely get, and I should have started off by saying that, and I said you got to clean the thing really good too.
And cleaning it makes a difference, because all that extra dust and weight can throw the fan blade off as well. It actually can throw the fan blade off.
That's right.
And don't clean one blade and leave the other ones, or you're going to use the quarter in a different way.
Right.
It's the same thing.
And then, when you get done, just make sure you really secure that thing up there, and and you're done. But I will say that I've had a fan, to your point, Larry, about securing the fan blade to the little paddles, that they have. Make sure that those are tight. I've had fan blades where they were in a rubber type of grommet, that the rubber grommet was starting to get deteriorated.
Yep.
So there was slop there, and you couldn't, wasn't a whole lot you could do. I mean, I could replace every fan blade, of course, but instead of that, I just rebalanced it out, and it was fine. So typically, this is the kind of thing that happens, and I know it drives a lot of people nuts out there with these fans that are all over the place. Don't go the first thing, I know there's guys out there, people out there that'll bend the blades and things. You're just asking for, trouble. I mean, it's been a while since I was in helicopter class, but you can really get yourself in some fun with lead and lag and all that kind of stuff.
And the other side is the fan blade arms are largely made out of cast metal, and if you try to start to bend them, you're going to break them.
You're going to break them.
You're going to break them. And then you are buying a new fan, because you're going to have a hard time to find arms anymore for anything. If they're of age, we're going to call it. Even if they're new, they're hard to find exact matches. So, I'm with you, John. General rule, don't try it. Don't do it. Well, folks, don't forget to join our Facebook group at Handyman Pros and join in the conversation, or send us an email, questions at Handyman Pros Radio Show. Follow us on Twitter at Handyman Radio, and we appreciate you, and we will talk to you next week. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed this podcast and have derived some value from it, here's 4 things you can do. 1, tell your friends about this podcast. 2, hit subscribe on your podcast player. While you're there, leave us a review. 3, subscribe to our newsletter by going to handymanprosradioshow.com and click on the subscribe button. We'll inform you of upcoming events, shows, and give you actionable tips for maintaining your home and property. And 4, send us an email with your questions to questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. That's handymanprosradioshow.com. That's our show for this week. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week on the Handyman Pros Radio Show.